Spectacular. Congratulations.
Good, I'm glad you liked it.
The most ambitious Harry Potter film to date.
Well, that's true.
Were you a little freaked out?
No. The only thing that freaked me out was that I actually didn't know how to do this stuff. I'd never done CGI like this before. And of course, people were very generous and tried to teach me how to do it, told me how to do it, but it's simply, you were learning on the job, which is quite a freaky thing. And I didn't know quite how to handle it sometimes. You know, everything is storyboarded. When I started the job, I found that the storyboards were an immense constriction on me. I hated them. Because, you know, there they were. There was no room for development. There was no room for improvisation. There was no room for the kind of the spark of the minute, of the moment. Unfortunately, that's how it has to be, because there are so many people who depend on my very first telling of that story, which is the storyboards, you know. Then everybody else works to that. So I simply had to come around, but that was quite freaky at times. Well, so I won't do it anymore.
I do that too a lot, actually.
Yeah, right.
So in a sense, having these veteran actors around you who are, you know, most of have been in all 4 films now, that must have helped you a lot then, I would think.
Well, it's not down to the actors. You know, the actors are... I knew a great many of the actors. They were, some of them, I knew them a lot, and some of them are close friends. And, you know, we don't have anything to teach one another any longer. We have the best to get out of one another, and of course I know what their best is, and they have some suspicion of what mine is, and so you push one another all the time. But not actually teach. The people who had to teach me were Stuart Craig, the designer, were the second unit man called Peter MacDonald, who knows everything there is to know about flying a broomstick, for instance, and did brilliantly on the underwater sequence. And then this other great man, a man called Jimmy Mitchell, who was the director of the visual effects, the electronic effects. And so each one of those guys is feeding you, and at the same time has to be fed by you. So this is not the conventional thing where the director sits up on the chair and says, you are going to do it like this. You can try that, and then all of a sudden you're going to be surrounded by people who say either you can't do it like that, or wouldn't you think it was better if we did it like that? And it's a great big kind of melting pot.
Mm-hmm. So you sit down with Daniel Radcliffe, who is, you know, put through the ringer in this film. When you started to work with him, what really started to impress you about this young man?
That he would take it on. That after this being the 4th film, he would still have this tremendous appetite to be better. And he really, really wanted to act. And I think that in some ways what had happened to him is that he had been stamped by the very first film, in which he was so tiny. I went and I watched all 3 films before this one obsessively, and he's a tiny child. He's not much bigger than that bottle, you know. He's very sweet and very cute, and suddenly in this film, of course, he isn't sweet and cute. And so he was very game and wanted to find out how he was going to put that new, more jagged character on the screen.
And also, you're dealing with, they're not kids anymore.
No,
they're
not
teenagers.
Kids. Yes, that's right.
Teenagers can be brats.
Yes,
Let's
indeed.
talk a little bit about that.
Right, well, we had to do that. And, you know, here, the other great factor in my life was the screenwriter. It was a man called Steve Clovis, who's a wonderful screenwriter and a wonderful comedic screenwriter as well. Not in a kind of red-nosed way, but very subtle relationship comedy. Everybody was aware that this was, the great test in this film was teenage. We even used to call the ball the 4th task, you know. Getting a partner for the ball was the 4th task. And so we could write, to a certain extent, we could write for that. We could say, well, look, it would be funny if Ron had a bit of trouble here, and if Harry failed to get a girl there, and so on and so forth. You can write till you're blue in the face. It doesn't mean anything unless it's actually happening with the people, with the actors in front of the camera. And the kids, of course, were right there. They were in that situation. They knew exactly what we were talking about, and were prepared to put themselves on the line and make fools of themselves. You know, there's a shot in which Ron comes in after having asked the great beauty in the film, the head of the French school, to go to the ball with him, and he is literally shaking with terror and shock, and Rupert absolutely loved doing that, and that was an example that simply repeated with the other two right the way through the movie. They were they knew what we were talking about and were prepared to put themselves out.
And making him dance with Maggie Smith. Oh, that must have given him a little wonderful. Bit of didn't sleep the night before.
I can't tell you. I think Rupert sleeps pretty sound almost every night, but certainly the idea of and it's in the book. We didn't use it originally. It wasn't in the original script, and we suddenly thought, that's too good to miss. And it actually had one of the great comic lines in this film. "Put your hand on my waist." Where? Which is a very funny line. And yes, Rupert was he was very, very funny, because Maggie's a wonderful, mean comedian as well. Yeah. I mean, mean in the sense that she's so kind of reserved and controlled.
She's Maggie Smith, for goodness sake. She's great. Yeah. There's no doubt that Alfonso Cuarón must have given you a little bit of advice.
Oh, yes, he did.
What advice do you give the next director?
Well, the same as he gave me. One is, if there's... Nobody is prepared for these movies. Chris Columbus didn't know how to make these movies when he started to make them. And he is a hero. He's a real hero. That he made these glorious first two films and invented this whole world and the techniques and whatnot. And Alfonso then made his own personal film, which is what they encouraged me to do. Each film is supposed to be personal, not cookie cutter. And simply what I would say to David was, look, I had trouble with this, and this. You're going to have your own troubles, but that some of them will overlap, and this is how I got out of it. And anytime you want to call me, call me. And we've had several conversations, David and I, and of course his problems are going to be different. But it's good that each generation would open up for the next generation.
Well, hats off to you, Mike. You did a spectacular job. And
Good,
I have
I'm
two
glad.
boys who cannot wait to see this movie.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, good. How old are they?
Thank you. 10 and 13.
Okay, they'll be all right.
Yeah, they'll be fine.
Yeah, they'll be fine.
Yeah, they'll be